After 9 weeks of what we could all say was a shaky run, the finale is now here, bringing every character from every episode finally together. This is my review of the season finale of What If. After his disheartening loss against Ultron last week, the Watcher gathers the heroes from all across the multiverse for one last stand. But now, before I properly start with my thoughts on the What If finale and the season in general, I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Anything and everything What If. How do you rank the episodes? How did you enjoy the show as a whole? How did this finale come across to you? Let me know all that down there. And if you like what you see here, consider clicking that subscribe button so you do not miss any future conversation on your favorite movies and TV shows. This episode does a great job at not wasting too much time, but giving us the basic principles of where our heroes are at right now. We step into Peggy Carter's world, and she's basically doing the Winter Soldier film where she's about to fight Batroc the Leaper, but the Watcher intervenes. T'Challa Star-Lord is helping out Peter Quill, who's about to be ingested by his dad, Ego, on planet Earth, and he's intervened by the Watcher. Killmonger is about to lose Wakanda. Pepper and Shuri are on their way to the throne, but the Watcher catches up to him before they could. Thor is already fighting off against Ultron bots, and the Watcher can't grab his attention, and he has to literally grab Thor, who is all scared when this giant hand comes to take him from the battle, which is a really funny moment. And then we have Gamora, who's just in her own world, who we didn't see that episode. And I kept thinking throughout this episode, why didn't we see that episode? And she's with Tony Stark. Not only that, she is called the Destroyer of Thanos. So I want to see this episode. Where is this episode of Warrior Princess Gamora? I'm so curious about everything in this world. Is this a reference to that run in Guardians of the Galaxy where Tony joined the Guardians throughout space? Because it definitely looked like it. They were in Nidavellir. They were going to build a literal shield around the world. There was Eitri, which I made a bet a few weeks ago at Zach Pope that we were never going to see him again, but lo and behold, he's there. And so, Warrior Princess Gamora, Captain Carter, T'Challa Star-Lord, Killmonger, Party Thor, and Doctor Strange Supreme gather forces and become the Guardians of the Multiverse. The plan is to take the Soul Stone away from Ultron and use this Infinity Destroyer, or whatever it was called, that war was that in Infinity War and Endgame, to destroy the stones and therefore Ultron himself. And honestly, when it comes to this action, the entire sequence of the battle throughout several universes in the multiverse, where they bring in the zombies, they bring in Scarlet Witch, and even Scarlet Witch cannot stop Ultron, it's awesome. It honestly reminds me of a Dragon Ball episode where it's insane what they do, and once again reminds me of my favorite aspect of the What If show throughout, and it's that they took full advantage of the fact that this is an animated series. They can go insane with their visuals, and they did go insane with their visuals. You can see there was budget on this. There was money put into this show, and I was really happy to see that money on screen with all the insane action, all the insane tactics, seeing the little dynamics at play with T'Challa and Killmonger and Thor and Doctor Strange, even with Captain Carter, and they eventually come to Ultron's original world, and we have a really sweet, endearing relationship between Captain Carter and this version of Black Widow because of the events we see at the beginning when we are in Winter Soldier territory. There's even a moment when it seems like things are about to end and Doctor Strange unleashes all the monsters inside of him against Ultron, and he turns into those giant tentacles, and we have a glance by Captain Carter that she recognizes this. So we have more connections that I think we will see in the future in some big MCU movie that comes out very soon. After the stone jumping back and forth as they take it away from Ultron and try to distract him, they get it ready in the Infinity Destroyer and they crush Ultron, they crush the Infinity Stones, but turns out this was only made and only works in the Infinity Stones from Gamora's universe, which I thought was a great twist and a callback to the rules that they establish in the comics. Honestly, this entire episode is a massive payoff, very similar to Age of Ultron in the comics, and I freaking love it as far as the action and the big climax of things is concerned. As a big payoff, I find it very satisfying, very action-packed and adrenaline-fueled, just very exciting overall. And they allow the best developed characters throughout this episode to give the final blow, that is Black Widow from Ultron's world and Captain Carter working together to put that arrow into his eye that has the virus. And the two AIs go hand in hand, and eventually Arnim Zola destroys the Ultron AI. It's visually, I would say, an underwhelming way to end things, but to destroy an AI, this would be the most effective, the most logical, and just quickest way to get it done. So in that sense, it really works for me, and it's not like they robbed us of seeing great action and great fighting throughout most of this episode. But just as it ends, just as Ultron's body falls to the ground, just as the character says that it feels not over, my biggest question throughout this episode got its answer, because I understood why we're bringing back T'Challa and Captain Carter and Party Thor and Doctor Strange Supreme and even Warrior Princess Gamora, who we didn't know before this episode, but why is Killmonger here? His episode ends with him still being purely evil, again, the exact same character he was in the Black Panther movie, and of course, he turns on them. He gathers the Infinity Stones, he wants to fix everyone's world, but now Arnim Zola has taken over the body of Ultron. He doesn't have the Infinity Stones anymore, but he wants them, and so the two of them start fighting and using their powers to hold the Infinity Stones, but turns out this was the Watcher's plan all along. And I thought, when we read that the name of this episode was What If the Watcher Broke His Oath? What if he broke his oath? What if he was one of the Guardians of the Multiverse? Why was Killmonger there? Because not only is he frigging evil, but out of all the characters, he's like the least effective one, maybe tied with Black Widow. Nevertheless, this was the Watcher's plan all along. He foresaw all these events, including the event of Doctor Strange trapping them in a pocket dimension. And turns out Doctor Strange is now going to stay vigilant for all eternity. He lost his love, he lost his heart, he has nothing else to do, but he saved the multiverse, he redeemed himself, and now he will stay vigilant until that big MCU movie that's coming out very soon. It's very cathartic to see all the heroes gathered together and eventually being brought into their own worlds. Even Natasha from Ultron's world gets a little bit of a second chance as she gets put into the world from the third episode, where Hank Pym killed the Avengers, where Loki took over Earth, where chaos is erupting. We have Captain America, we have Captain Carter aboard the helicarrier, and Natasha is brought into this world and she helps defeat Loki. She even puts Loki under the scepter spell. So I thought that was really great. And we still have a post-credit scene. It doesn't go where I thought it was going to, but it also doesn't go against it, because we have Captain Carter being brought back into her world. They find something aboard the ship, and they see that it's the Hydra Stomper, and Natasha says that there is someone inside, which is a little bit of a payoff from the moment where Peggy looks at the picture of Steve at the pub outside time and space, I guess, where the Guardians of the Multiverse were all gathered. I think this is going to be the Winter Soldier, and I hope it is. I would love to see that in this world, Steve became the Winter Soldier. I thought they were going to confirm that. They didn't, but again, they also didn't tell us it's not that. That's not what's happening. So maybe episode 1 of season 2 we'll see that. And I think definitely we'll see continuations of Maybe not all these stories. I think Killmonger's is done. I think the third episode where the Avengers were killed and now Black Widow was brought into that world, I think that story is done. But I think we can go back to Doctor Strange Supreme in that big MCU movie that's coming out next year. I think we can see more of Warrior Princess Gamora. Maybe even the beginning of that story before we get the Guardians of the Multiverse episode. Captain Carter, I think there's more interesting stories to tell in that world. What If ends on a high note for me, a satisfying note, a fun note that feels like it had a lot of fat coming into this finale that needed to be trimmed. Clearly they were inspired by Age of Ultron and obviously the What If comics. But I felt like a lot of those episodes didn't need to be there, much like we didn't get a Warrior Princess Gamora episode, and again, I would have loved to see that. I don't think we needed a Party Thor episode if all the payoff was going to be was this episode. I don't think we needed a Killmonger episode if all we ever were going to get as a payoff was this episode. I think the Captain Carter episode, the Doctor Strange episode, and maybe going back a little bit on my word, the Party Thor episode, which sets up the coming of Ultron, maybe those were needed, but apart from that, I really think a lot of episodes in this show, and I like a lot of them. Again, the T'Challa episode was really necessary, but most of them, like 4 episodes out of this show, I could have cut, and we would have a really solid animated movie that still felt like Age of Ultron. Put in a few other scenes from each of these worlds that would be left, but there's a lot of fat that needed to be trimmed, a lot of unnecessary fat throughout this show. Without a doubt, as far as I'm concerned, even though it has its fun moments, its interesting worlds, interesting premise, and explores some of the concepts in really imaginative ways, I think What If is a very inconsistent show. Then when it can be good, it's really good. It's never horrible, but at very worst, it's very uninteresting. And that's even worse than if it was a horrible show, because at least we would remember the horribleness, if that's a word. What I really hope is that Season 2 can pick up on these mistakes, trim a little bit of that unnecessary fat, or at least make most of itself very essential and necessary for it all to work by the end. I think it has some real highlights, but it also has some very forgettable elements to it all. And I think it doesn't help in making the whole experience very inconsistent. I'm giving What If Season 1 a B-. Overall, I would say enjoyable, because I enjoy spending time with these characters and coming into this grand epic finale, but I would have preferred to enjoy the whole experience. But those are my thoughts on What If, the show. What are your thoughts on it? Let me know all of that in comments below. Start the conversation. That is always the most important part. And if you enjoy what you saw here, make sure you consider clicking that subscribe button. And my review of Dune is already up, so you can go check that out. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back very soon with one more What If video. So I hope to see you there. And so until the next one, love each other and love the movies.